How do you keep your kids excited and inspired about math during class?
What I try to do is I try to do a lot of questioning and not a lot of telling.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll ask them questions so they can come up with their own ideas and procedures and algorithms. So really using like an inquiry model for instruction, and that usually keeps kids really interested. And I try to not be very routine about how I call on kids, so they never know when they're going to get called on. And so because it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like unexpected.
Yeah,
They're always usually keeping engaged with what's going on.
that's a good idea. Do you believe that middle school students are pushed so much with the standardized testing in math, and that is the reason they lose a lot of interest in math?
Yes, and actually, it happens before.
Mm-hmm.
I think it happens a lot before middle school. I have done in the past with the kids is I have them do a math biography, and in the math biography, I, ask them how they feel about math, and if they struggle in math, like to pinpoint when it started, and it starts a lot of times with kids in fourth grade when they start to feel frustration with fraction and fraction concepts. And so that's where they really start to like kind of tune out.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see kids that continues to like skip it. But the standardized testing, I think, to get back to your question, your standardized testing, I think, is a lot, but necessary.
Yeah.
I think we have to have those measures in place. And I think going forward in Common Core and Smarter Balance types of assessments is going to give us more of a true kind of idea of where our kids are at, especially since they'll be having their own individualized test that will have a baseline. And so we can see more growth, not necessarily just a snapshot of that year on
Yeah.
that day. So I think the direction that we're going in is a really good direction, but it is a lot of pressure for the kids. It's a lot of pressures for the teachers too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, well, I guess you already answered that question. Do your students look more bored and confused during class than interested and excited?
Oh no, they always look, they really don't look bored.
Okay.
The time that they look bored, and there's going to be times where we have to sit down and we have to take notes.
Yeah.
And so when I'm not walking around and I have to sit down and I'm writing under the document camera is probably when they look the most bored. But even then they're engaged because I'm popping them with questions. I don't just say copy this. Oh, I only usually do that after we've already talked about something. So even if I'm going to give them a definition, I ask them to look at the word and say, what do you think this is? And then they go from that point. And so I'm like, oh, you're close. And so I'll bring them into the conversation with that, and then I'll have them write.
Yeah, so they're
So
never like
they're always
losing
a
the
part of the
concentration.
lesson. I always
Yeah.
try to make the kids a part of the lesson.
What do you believe needs to be done in order to get students more enthusiastic about mathematics?
It needs to be not like a sitting and getting kind of model. Kids need to be involved in doing experiments, looking at patterns, looking at data, and just really being involved in it, and using a model of like when you talk about something, you're starting something new, you're bringing kids in with an idea. What is the big idea about this? You have it be some kind of scenario, have them be, role playing. All of those in there need to be a part of it. It can't be you come in, here's the notes, here's the practice, you go home.
Yeah.
The kids really have to experience the math. And I think that's really the key to keeping them engaged and interested and getting them to like it. So.
Do you believe that gender plays any role in interest in math or with grades?
You know, it's hard to pinpoint that. I think, because I have examples of boys and girls that are in the same kind of, the kids who just are unmotivated.
Mm-hmm.
There's boys and girls that I have that fit into that mold. And then I also have boys and girls that are super high achievers. And so to say necessarily that there's a gender issue, no. They have different issues. Girls tend to be pleasers,
Yeah.
where boys tend to do it and then have that, well, yeah, I did it. I'm awesome. You need to give me some feedback. Yeah, I know I did it right.
Yeah.
Where the girls will say, did I do this right? Where the boys will be like, oh, I did it right.
Yeah.
So there tends to be that kind of sense either, and it's hard to correct. It's more hard to correct boys
Mhm.
because they think that right away
They're
what
right.
they did was correct, where the girls are more open to being corrected. I think that's probably the biggest gender difference that would pop up for me.
Okay. Over the years of you teaching math, have you seen an increase or a decrease in interest of math of students?
It's hard to say. It's all pretty much about the same,
Mhm.
but the difference I've noticed is that kids are not interested in doing the practice.
Okay.
You know, the amount of homework that comes in and, guided practice that we do is significantly down. It's one of the biggest issues is that kids just genuinely do not do practice well.
Okay.
And they don't, if they don't get it, they're like done with it. They don't advocate for themselves, needing more help and that type of thing. And I don't know if that's really because of, there's been some changes in where concepts are, and I think
Mhm.
some of the concepts that we expect our seventh graders to do are a little bit above where maturity-wise they are mathematically. And I think that's what they struggle with, and they don't know how to deal with that struggle. But the interest, I don't think, has changed at all.
Yeah.
I think they still have the same interest, and it could be just because of my class. It's just the way that how I teach too. But I haven't noticed anything great difference in it.
Okay. Research has shown that teachers don't know how to get their students inspired about math during class, so they believe that techniques should be taught in grad school. What is your opinion about that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think if I go back to my experiences when, my in my undergrad, I had one methods course in mathematics, and then my other one was in my major. That methods course was great for like really thinking about what needed to be in a math lesson. And then going to grad school, the difference in grad school is that where I went to grad school, I went to Saginaw Valley, and it was an extension center. All of our instructors were teachers. Like, they were actual classroom teachers
Okay.
most of them were adjuncts, so they just had this one class that they were teaching. And so they were giving you everyday practical experience of that you were taking back and taking to your classroom. That's what
Nice.
the whole grad school should be.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be, it needs to be, grad school needs to be about practice. Your undergrad needs to be about theory, and I understand that. But once you get to your senior year and you're getting a degree in education, before they put you into a classroom, I think that you need to do more role playing
Mhm.
with your classmates of, we all know how that goofy kid is,
Yeah.
and just really thinking about lesson plans and what the elements of a good quality lesson are. That's what needs to be at the end of that before you go into a classroom. But truth be told, you don't get any experience until you have your actual own classroom.
And you're
Not
doing all
even
the
your
work.
not even your student teaching. Once you have your own room,
Mhm.
it's like the whole game changes. But to
Yeah.
have those ideas of things you want to try, I think would be a great experience.
Where do you get most of your delivery techniques to use in the classroom?
We use Connected Math.
Okay.
So Connected Math has, the plan for Connected Math is in three parts. We have a launch, and then we have an explore, and then summary. So the launch is always like what I talked about, that real life kind of thing, the role play, like what role are you playing or how is this applied? And then with the explore, they're looking at a problem or some data or looking for patterns. And so they do that usually in, partners or groups, or we'll do it together as a class. And so the teaching on my part really happens at the end in the summary, and that's after we've done the problem. And so then we come back and we're like, okay, what kinds of things did you notice? And that's usually how it starts. And so for me, it's laid out. Like, all of my resource is completely laid out for me.
Okay. Um, what is one of the most negative things that you have experienced while teaching math?
Um, the lack of support from parents probably would be the
That makes
most.
sense.
Is that, just the whole, I've heard it for 17 years now, is, well, I didn't do well in math, and so I don't expect them to do well in math either. And so just not giving that genuine support of, hey, you know what, looking at grades and picking out positive things, or
Yeah.
when they're sitting down, I don't expect a parent who hasn't used 7th grade math in 20 years to know what we're doing.
Yeah.
But I expect them to ask their students questions like, oh, what did you do today? And not accept the answer of nothing, but like look at their notes and say, ask questions. What does this mean? Why did you do this? Can you explain this to me? That's more beneficial to the kids.
Yeah.
And then making sure that they're working on quality. I mean, not even knowing math, you can look at something that's going to be handed in and see if it's quality.
Mhm.
And I oftentimes get papers from students who do not have that parental support, and it's just mishmash.
Yeah.
Where if one person would have looked at that and said, really? You're going to turn this in? Let me tell you, this is what your notes look like, and so this is your model. This doesn't look anything like that.
it.
That's a support that parents should do. So that's probably the most, because I can take the kids, that's not a problem at all.
Yeah. When did you start incorporating your student research or your SRNs into your class?
Oh,
IRNs?
No, ISNs.
ISNs.
Interactive Student Notebooks. This is the first year
Okay.
that we've done them. Mrs. Bruckman and I are doing them together. It was suggested through the CMP training that this is something that we do, and that's where we put those summary notes.
Okay.
So anything, once we get to the end of something, we put it in there. Something doesn't go in there first.
Mm-hmm.
That's not our launch. Our launch doesn't come from there. That's really our summary of where we get an idea and then put it all together so the kids have it, and then they can use those on their quizzes and their tests.
Oh, okay. Have you seen like an increase in their enthusiasm about
Oh yeah, they
learning
love
math
that.
with those?
They love those. They're
That's
like,
good.
can I use my SN? Can I use my SN? So and
Yeah.
they really, really like it as a resource.
Oh, that's
And then we
good.
do foldables in them and put things in them. They love that stuff. So it gives them a little tactile things to do aside from just writing. And yeah.
Okay. Do your students tell you how they learn best or what types of techniques make them more interested?